Welcome to another edition of Byte High No Limit. In this edition we'll be covering teletext lore. The episode itself was taken from the live stream of the Teletext Sofa Club that myself and Dan Farriman do for the Discord server, and goes out live on Dan Farriman's channel, which you can find at Illarterate, which is at ILLARTERATE. Special mentions got to go out to Who's the Suit, which is Leela Johnson, for recording me a sting or two for this particular episode. And also the music is coming from Mr Nissneness at mrnissneness.bandcamp.com, and also the Crash Test Dummies pastiche that you'll hear a bit later, courtesy of Wayne Deaden at WJD2Owls. So with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's get straight into the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Teletext Sofa Club and Teletext Our Podcast crossover tonight. My co-host is here with me, Carlos Attrell. I nearly said my Carl is here. Hello, my Carl. How are you, my Carl?
Well, hello, my Dan. How are you?
I'm very well. It's good to be back. It's been a while, but it's always great to be back on the internet.
It's brilliant. It's nice to be back, and there's plenty to do a little bit of catch up on. And you've selected a lovely subject to talk about tonight as well. So looking forward to talking a little bit about that, but having a good old catch up really. And it's nice to have people in on the Discord, having a sticking their ears in and adding their two penneth from time to time. So it's all good, mate. All good.
Excellent. Yes. Hello to everybody in the Discord. It's always good to have you here. You did mention tonight's topic, but I can't take 100% credit for this, because I was watching YouTube and a podcast cropped up in my recommendations, and it was called Facts Law. Now, appropriately enough, the name of the podcast is Net Law, but they were doing an episode on Facts Law. Now, both of those types of communication are plays on the word folklore. So folklore, facts and traditions that have been accumulated over time through education or experience. So facts law, a very, very interesting subject, actually. I couldn't wait to text Carl about this because I knew he would love to do an episode about this. So what's your understanding of facts law, Carl?
Well,
very high tech. What's this?
it's a fax machine.
Is it? Marvellous what they can do nowadays. What does it do?
It transmits documents down a telephone wire.
You must have to roll them up ever so small.
It's electronic. You put your documents in, you dial a number, and they come out the other end.
What other end?
Wherever there's another fax machine.
What's happening?
It's the office. Someone's faxing something to me.
Oh, pictures.
If you've got work to do at home, British Telecom has more to offer than phones.
Well, thanks for the rabbit hole, really, Dan, because it's one of them things that you don't really see the universe that you get yourself into, because fax law originated from something before that as well, copier law. So the technology of the day was photocopiers. People would photocopy things over on a photostat or a Xerox, and these jokes would be circulated around offices. People would photocopy jokes and circular letters, chain letters, and anything like that. And then as the facts would distort, the original joke might get lost and a new joke be created from it. So you get hoaxes and you get sort of hearsay and myths coming around from it. And by extension, fax law would be putting those pieces of paper through from copier law, and sending them to other offices, and they would slowly distort as well. Some examples that I found on the net was a tie on a cartoon cat will get longer and longer, and people would make the tie longer and longer on the fax machine. And of course, when you're sending it through on a fax, the fax doesn't cut off until the drawing's gone through. So, you can imagine people like spamming somebody else with a cartoon of a cat wearing a tie, and it just going on forever.
So it's funny for the first 2 pages, maybe, but by the 50th page, you're trying to unplug the thing as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I mean, if you weren't getting that, you're getting chain letters. A fax attack as well, where if you're unlucky enough, it used to happen on Facebook with us, modern equivalents, isn't it? It's sort of like there used to be groups like Let's All Poke Dan, and everyone joined the group and poke the person that they were mentioning, share their profile on Facebook, and everybody would poke them to death. So yeah, you had a fax attack as well, similar to that. Plenty of conspiracy theories. Like the one of the most famous ones was gullible being removed out of the dictionary, which was apparently accredited down to fax law as well. Plenty of fax law jokes, probably better than some of mine. Told you I was a gambler and my wife's left me, but don't worry, I think I can win her back.
Hey.
And I'm here all night. There's quite a few examples flying around of fax law. And we see, hopefully we can explore as that moves into other tech laws as well. You can see that goes into things like copy and paste and all that onto Facebook and socials. It's the same stuff, but maybe doesn't degrade as much in quality.
Yeah, it's like a game of telephone, except it's telefax. I learned the other day that fax machines are called telefaxes. So that's a cool little crossover. If YouTube is to be believed there, but it isn't always, is it? But no. Yeah, I remember back in the 2000s, I would get those types of emails that would say, send this on to 5 people, otherwise something bad might happen to you.
Yeah, you won't run out of fax paper. That's it.
Yeah, well, that's one good thing about moving over to the internet, but that's more net law, as in communication via the internet and the communication of these urban legends, etc., knowledge passed on between each other directly via email. So that was the evolved version of fax law, which was the evolved version of copy law, and then before that would have just been, I don't know, paper law, just word of mouth, basically.
Yeah, or knocking things up on a typewriter and things being miscommunicated in transcriptions. That'd be a thing. And also, when I was doing a little bit of research into it, there's a whole Soviet side to it as well. I don't know. Did you pick up on that at all, Dan?
Yeah, that's mentioned in the guys. If you want to look this up, there's an excellent article on Wikipedia. And normally, I wouldn't recommend Wikipedia articles because they're secondary sources, but this one is an actual piece of research, and it's got over a dozen actual, what have we got here? We've got a bunch of books that aren't on the internet, old books from the 90s, urban folklore from the paperwork empire, urban folklore, basically a series by Alan Dundes and Carl R. Pater. I think that's how you pronounce it. So yeah, that's an excellent starting point. And right, so
I just want to add about the Soviet thing. It's very interesting because typewriters were registered to the state, so the subculture of sending subversive messages had to be done on non-registered typewriters. So it was quite interesting to see how their version of fax law was going through, really just to try and be sort of, I don't know, I guess like white hat hackers, the anonymous of the day.
Actually remind me of an excellent documentary I saw about how they would have bootleg music, but they would use printed x-rays, the material they print x-rays on. It turns out that is a half decent way of printing records. So it was obviously it had a limited shelf life. It might last a few months or whatever.
Celluloid sort of that sort of plasticky material. I think could be
That's
quite
right.
explosive as well, actually. Yeah.
Oh, be careful then. Make sure your turntable doesn't blow up. But yeah, they would do that when Western music was banned. They would get imported bootleg music and play that on the record player with a picture of somebody's leg. Yes. What would be an appropriate song for that? You put your left leg in, your left leg out. I don't know.
Well, I won't dignify that with the answer that you're waiting for.
Well, sorry, yeah, I'm getting off topic as I tend to do. Yes, sorry.
No.
So, Fax law, yeah. So, Fax law is a very interesting topic, and it's funny that this is the first I'd heard of it in my whole life. It's existed since fax machines started, basically. The first use of the term Xerox law was in Michael J. Preston's essay, Xerox Law, 1974. And then photocopy law is sort of the generic term for that because Xerox is a copyrighted term, isn't it? I don't know if that's become like Hoover or something.
It's a generic name, isn't it? So
yes.
yeah. So people Xerox things, but yeah, it's photocopier, I guess, for us, like non-advertising types.
Yeah, and I would definitely think about getting those books, certainly, because it sounds like a very interesting subject. But what I wanted to ask tonight, because this is a teletext stream / podcast, isn't it? What I wanted to ask is, could we apply that idea to teletext and have teletext law? So that would be all one word, as in urban legends, humorous stuff, etc., transmitted via teletext. Now, I think it should be pointed out that people couldn't communicate directly via teletext in the same way as faxes, because broadcast teletext was a one-way system. But it could be said that teletext does have its own folklore, and there was a way around that, because there would be moderators. It would act like a heavily moderated forum, wouldn't it? You'd have letters pages, things like Backchat and Magazine, which we'll go into a little bit more tonight. So yeah, this relates to teletext in a wider cultural context than just the history of the medium. So we're talking about its social impact and how it's remembered. So Carl, I wondered if you could come up with any ideas off the top of your head as to what might constitute teletext law.
Because it's asynchronous, as you say, so it's not like a 2 and 4 thing where you get feedback straight away from a recipient. A lot of the teletext law does stand up in the way that you'd interpret how teletext is behaving in front of you. So a very good example that you highlighted to actually contextualize the whole thing was when the page doesn't refresh as quickly as it normally would in a football score. You know, I actually thought it was because they were changing the page, and of course, lo and behold, the score would change, or a wicket would go down, you know, or it would flick very quickly and then flick back. You know, and you always thought that it was because they were working behind the scenes to crank it up. And it only really just occurred to me when we were discussing the podcast that perhaps that's just a load of rubbish. So all this time I'd believed, you know, that bit of teletext law.
Oh, yeah, I definitely did that. I would watch cricket matches on teletext, and if it was taking a long time, I would start to get nervous because, well, maybe that's just because following the England cricket team in the 90s, it was like that. They would lose a wicket every 5 minutes. So every time teletext stalled, there just so happened to be a wicket because we were really bad at batting. Yeah, but going back to the teletext law, I think that comes under the heading of rituals. So everybody would have their own rituals, and superstitions, I guess, is a good one. But there were also rumors. Lots and lots of rumors about teletext services, because teletext ran for so long and there was so much content on there, so many magazines and so many people using it. Well, people would make up stuff. Some of it wasn't even some of it was true, but a lot of it was just made up stuff. I mean, one of mine was, will the page load quicker if you press hold and you unhold it again? All that would do is make it so that you could see the pages scrolling around at the top. You know, the number that changes?
Yep, the magazine as it's going round, yeah.
You could see where it was currently in the broadcast. But in my head, it was, come on, make it hurry up, come on. So that was...
Yeah, and that's no different to if you're watching something on Netflix and it buffers, you pause it to try and make sure there's a little bit more in the cache, so when you play it, it doesn't stutter. So the thought process carries on, and now it actually works. It works, but yes. Back then again, rituals. It's sort of like you would. I had a very daft ritual of like shutting my eyes for 30 seconds just to see if I could get the same page up again as it went round in a carousel. And actually, you wouldn't know if it actually flicked over or not. It's just like just some sort of like mind exercise I used to do from time to time. And the clock tracker as well, going to the clock tracker and some of the pages up near the 600s, I used to have sort of conspiracy theories about what the ITV region opt-out pages, what they were, and were they the first to know about something, in the event of an emergency or something like that, or seeing some of the abbreviations and wondering what they actually meant. There's a lot that law could be based on that. But in these enlightened times, you could perhaps dispel some, but others you just don't know about. I mean, there's this infamous CFAX holidays that keeps coming around as well, and that is law with a capital L now, if you ask me.
Well, it's partially our fault because we propagate this, don't we? It's sort of... It's always been there. People always used to call it CFAX holidays because CFAX became a sort of generic term for the medium. Like we said, Hoover
or Xerox,
or Google or Xerox, yeah. So it's no surprise that people get the two mixed up. But the reason why that meme is funny to us as teletext geeks is because, well, of course, CFAX was the BBC, and the BBC never had any advertising or holidays or anything like that. It was a teletext limited thing. But then teletext limited caught that sort of controversy by calling their teletext service teletext, don't they? It's really confusing looking back and having to write articles because you always have to clarify we're talking about teletext limited here and not teletext with a lowercase t. Yeah. Well, ZX Guesser says, in regards to your shutting your eyes to not see all the later subpages for spoilers. Now, that reminded me of when you would try and avoid the football scores on a Saturday, which was often a pointless exercise because it would just crop up on the screen. Now, I mean, these days I do it with the Formula One. They just blazingly give it out when I'm listening to the football. They're saying, oh, Max Verstappen has won in the Formula One. Well, thank you for that. I was going to watch it later.
Yeah, because when you turn the text on, it goes to page 100. You always had that risk of the double height headline being about sport, and if you were trying to avoid something, it would often come up. You go, another loss for the Lactics. Yeah, oh right, okay, that's it. I know what I'm not doing tonight. I'm not watching the highlights. But there was that goes back to a story that with Ian Westbrook. Who I interviewed on one of the Teletext People podcasts. He said that they used to run the snooker as live on the BBC, but they were quicker on CFAX because the game had probably finished 20 minutes prior, and it was only being shown as live on grandstand, for instance. So they used to get complaints. They said, "Can you slow the CFAX down or embargo the results?" So it would tie up with what people were watching on the telly. So that's often that sounds like that's not a modern phenomenon at all. It sounds like it could happen that way. So my shut my eyes so I don't read what happens on magazine sub page 12, so I could get back round to sub page 1 again would be most fitting for that, I reckon.
Yeah, waiting for the QPR scores to come around. But you only want to know what the other scores are and not the QPR score. But then it's completely ruined when loads of goals are scored. So they go into a fourth sub-page.
yeah, you get loads of different scorers. You know, it was all right if they scored a hat-trick, because it'd be one name with three numbers after it. But yeah, when you've got like, and nowadays, I mean they're putting down assists, missed penalties, VAR overrules and all that. If you imagine that on a CFAX page of today, it'd be like as if it'd be like the live international score where one page was devoted to it, and it'd be like that for every single fixture in the top tier of football. So there is that. So did you have any more sort of superstitions with your CFAX and Oracle habits?
I always
bamboozle at all? Did you ever sort of like think that you could?
I know what you're referring to. I never heard this myself. I only heard this when I came onto the internet and heard people talking about it and joined this sort of community, that you could cheat at bamboozle. I had no idea that was possible. Maybe because I was young, or maybe I didn't want to.
You weren't a rule breaker, were you?
Well, you're only cheating yourself, when you cheat at bamboozle. So it was mentioned in our introduction theme by Mr. Wayne Deaden. Thank you very much, Wayne. One of the long-time watchers of Teletext Sofa Club and listeners to Teletext R. A while ago, he made us some tunes, and one of them referred to that fact. He said you could cheat at bamboozle by pressing buttons really quickly, which is basically true. It sums it up in a nice little package there. I had no
page back, couldn't you? If you did one wrong, you could page back on modern sets. But yeah, I don't know whether you could sort of like you couldn't like just like I don't know, brute force all the possible answers, maybe.
Once there was a man who asked questions on teletext. His name was Bambaboozler. And when you got a question wrong, he said that you have been bamboozled. Goes a way to cheat, they'll press buttons really quickly.
Eject is here, and he says, in this house, we love CFAX Acid Crew. So shout out to CFAX Acid Crew, who we've both met, I think, at one of the block parties in Cambridge. He came along for the last day. Eject says, hello there. One of my videos made me interested in the concept of teletext. Oh, well, that's fantastic. I'm glad that I could introduce you to this crazy rabbit hole, and hence you're here tonight. So welcome to the show. It's good to have you here. So I'd like to open this up to the people in chat while we're talking about it. Did any of you guys have any superstitions or rituals? Like, for example, I had a ritual of checking the pages at the same time each day, because it would be in the morning, either before breakfast or while I was having breakfast, just quickly, because it would only take a few minutes to eat breakfast. But teletext was great for that because of the brevity. It was short, to the point, and you could get a very good picture of everything that was happening in the world. It didn't go into too much detail. Or you could actually press like 107 and go into more detail. But you could, I guess, take it in at your own pace, which was a great thing of teletext. So you could go to work and say, oh, did you see that thing about this guy in the media? Was it Ozzy Osbourne? That Ozzy Osbourne, what has he been saying this week? And you knew that because you checked teletext. And you could pretend to be knowledgeable about every subject.
Well, when we're talking about teletext law and hoaxes and things like that, there've been some really good ones. Worms, the special Team 17 April the 1st edition, and that's come round as teletext law now. Whereas some people are genuinely asking about it.
Yeah, I always enjoy it when some of those hoaxes get reposted, either in seriousness or tongue in cheek, because it's always nice to see them again. It's always nice to see them roll around again. Like with the worms thing, excellent artwork by Steve Horsley, who actually worked for teletext back in the day. And that's why you believe it, because it has that genuine element made by a genuine teletext artist from back in the day. And I guess that's why CFAX Holidays works in sort of the same way. It's genuine enough to fool people, but as Peter Kwan points out with that screenshot, you can tell that it's fake by the fact that the shadow on the palm tree is facing the wrong way. The sun is in the top right, but the shadow is casting to the right.
And that was that.
So somebody has actually got a real good holiday deal from CFAX. Because, you see, I always thought at the time that, you eventually got what the number was and you phoned it up or whatever you had to do, and they were all gone, and it was just a sort of lost leader. But you actually got a decent holiday from that.
Yeah, I've got a terrific holiday, yeah.
Brilliant. Rod, thank you. You've restored my faith in human nature. Rod from Rayleigh, thank you.
Zedek Gesser says, the worst thing that people do is crop out the header so people can't even see the date for a clue. Oh, right, we're talking about the CFAX Holidays thing there, I think.
Oh, I see, yes. Yeah, because the date of it. I mean, and the COVID one, which was a pastiche of it, that I made with the broken palm tree and just like rubbishly put it in COVID-19 where CFAX was. I've just realised that the shadow must be in the wrong direction on that one as well.
but no, that stuff is great because it's a transformative meme in the modern internet age. It's very memeable and it's out there in the public domain. It's a public domain picture. Anybody can use it for whatever they want. It's actually a composite of it takes little bits from different pages. So you've got, I don't think I've mentioned this on anything before, but look at the top, you've got the CFAX logo taken directly from CFAX. Holidays is taken from the travel and weather page on a 90s CFAX page. And then you've got the palm tree, bottom left, taken from a BBC travel page. And the rest of it is just filled in with Megaluf 1988, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a composite of different pages.
It's a portmanteau. It's a celebration of teletext.
And I feel like that is very much in the modern spirit of remixing things. They put it out there, let other people adapt it. And I think that's one of the great things with teletext art and what the community is doing. And Paul B. Davis, of course, who you spoke to on your podcast, you're putting the information and the data and the software out there for people to try it and, adapt it however they want, put their own spin on it. Right. So, well, going back to our teletext law, I think language is an important part of folklore, and so it's an important part of teletext law, our concept of teletext law that we're exploring tonight. So if anybody ever visited Digitizer, you'd know that specific teletext magazines had their own internal languages, so words and phrases that are particular to that little magazine, or little idiosyncrasies and things like that that are particular to those. For example, magazine. I'm going to go into magazine quite a lot, I think. I'd like to speak about that. But just to say that they would often censor the name of Backchat, which was the BBC competitor to magazine. So it would be B apostrophe B asterisk CK CH apostrophe T, which I always thought was very funny. But oddly enough, on the BBC equivalent, they didn't talk about magazines. So I guess they're living rent-free in their head.
Hi, I'm Layla Johnston from Shift Run Stop, and you're listening to Byte High No Limit.
So, in regards to services having their own language, look no further than Digitizer, which had its own internal law. In fact, it could have had the law for 500 teletext services. It had crazy characters. It had its own weird in-jokes. Do you remember the revealos? So those were press reveal to see XYZ. So it introduced an element of interactivity where you press reveal on the remote and you could see a nice little mosaic of some snakes saying hiss, hiss, hello, hiss. But it was small pleasures, but delightful in its own way. And there was a little bit of the haves and the have-nots as well, because if you didn't have reveal functions on your remote, you couldn't see it, and you were thinking, oh, what is that? So you'd go to the school playground the next day and ask, well, what was that reveal? I don't know. Let's ask Jim. He's the richest one. He's got the fanciest color television. But what did it say?
And he wouldn't read it because he had an Amiga.
Yeah. Excellent. So ZX Guesser says, mock, mock, a mock, chill, ning, ning. Those are just a couple of the phrases that were used. There were like hundreds of them. If you go to Superpage 58, the website by Chris Bell, who we've had on this show in the past, you will find a whole glossary of these terms, an A to Z of these silly digitizer in jokes. I mean, off the top of my head, though, there was the Swans, and they found their way into Digitizer 2000 and the modern incarnation of YouTube Digitizer. What else did you have, Carl? Do you remember?
Well, we had Mr. T with the bins. That was always my favourite one. There's one I could get as well. So yeah, stay away from my bins. And it was like all in like the last thing was always in uppercase, and it was like, yeah, so that was excellent. Chart Cat used to have as well, Man's Daddy, and the diary as well. The diary was great, and yeah, I was reading back through some of them on Super Page 58 when I first, getting reacquainted with everything, and my God, that was so funny. I went out and bought Paul Rose's book, Confessions of a Chatroom Geek, on the strength of it. So. Yeah, no, it was some really funny stuff. But yeah, it was sort of like it was a subculture within a subculture, wasn't it? And you had a lot of deference and a lot of references paid to things within the world of Digitizer on the teletext service. It does actually make me think, and one of the guys in the Discord will know this, but there was a serial letter writer who used to write in, and I can't remember the name of the chap, but I think he used to write into Digitizer and a lot of other places as well, and used to get his thing up, and I think he's very much teletext lore as well. So I can't remember the chap's name, but I'm sure that someone out there will know it.
ZX Guesser says it's Stuart N. Hardy.
Stuart N. Harding. So do you know much about this guy?
Well, apparently he used to write into... Let's have a look. He has a page on Your Sinclair, and we've got discussion and sightings 1998-99. He was in Your Sinclair magazine. No, it wasn't actually. Chatterbox on CFAX, Digitizer channel for TV letters on 5text.
It was a scourge.
Yeah,
he was a one-man content creator. He could be like a chatbot, couldn't he?
Here's an example. Hot topic. Will piracy ever be eradicated? And Stuart says, piracy will, unfortunately, never be eradicated as long as greedy computer users persist in their quest to gain something for nothing. So we all agree with that, Mr. Hardy. Is he sort of the Piers Morgan of letter writers then? He's trying to rile people up and get people to call in or respond to him.
Well, I think that what I took away from it was the fact that he would write in with the most obvious thing, but it would get printed. But yeah, he would oftentimes contradict himself, and to the stage where people wouldn't understand his style of writing or his handwriting, and like, depending on what it was, either put it up straight away or completely ignore him, depending on who it was. So that was quite interesting. So yeah, I think he's very much teletext law as well. So we should add him to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think he was printed because he was so infamous. At some point, he would have been part of the furniture, I guess. Part of the sofa club. There you go.
Well, so, maybe he was like the emergency broadcast system. If you weren't getting letters from Stuart N. Hardy, you knew that the service wasn't going out.
Yes, it was like a test. Hardy Day is March the 14th, apparently, so we'd missed that. We've missed the opportunity to do a stream about that.
Why March the 14th?
Well, like the Queen, Hardy needs an official birthday so that we can celebrate his prose. Hardy Day, 14th of March, started 2000, is a day of contemplation, merrymaking, and messing around Mr. T's bins. Praise you, Lord, for the birth of your son, Hardy.
Well, that we'll certainly give that the old hashtag treatment next year. Then we'll try and bring that up. We'll put that next to National Teletext Day.
He's teletext law in himself, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Which reminds me, National Teletext Day, would that be another law? Because I'm sure I see that at least twice a year.
Yeah, Teletext Day. What is it? September? Something like
September 23rd or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember
around
now.
about that time. And I think this year will be, is it 49 years since CFX went on the air? Mm-hmm. And then next year is the big 5-0, which we've got our plans for.
We have plans.
Teletext law has been going on for almost 50 years, guys. 50 years. We're even going back to the
original. The original teletext law was Mr. McIntyre putting a hidden message in for Mrs. McIntyre to get the stove on, rub the sticks together, get the stove working, because he's coming back for his crispy pancakes or whatever they had in the 70s.
Did he actually mention the Finder's crispy pancakes, or is that some law that you've added?
That's law as of 2023. I was just trying to make it as 70s as possible.
Yeah, so that is the original teletext law, and we're still on the lookout for recoveries of that. Maybe one day.
Finding a magazine that appeals to all the family is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Page the Oracle, the magazine on the screen.
Well, then we've added so far, we've got our serial letter writer. What was the gentleman's name again?
Stuart N. Hardy.
Yep. So I think he's basically going to be used. I'm surprised he's not on Twitter or someone purporting to be on Twitter. We've got the Magic Magazine carousel. Pressing hold to see if that would actually cache the page and make it load any quicker.
Language,
and the way other people refer to each other in the teletext world. And also other popular bits of law, which were actually, which we always go back to, the Wickham Wanderers Super Striker.
Oh yes.
Where they advertised on CFAX. That's got to be law as well. And they got what was the gentleman's name again?
Rory Essendo.
Yeah, Rory Essendo.
Roy.
And then the Queen's Park Rangers football manager who got the sack via Oracle or CFAX. So yeah, there's plenty of law around it. So it's quite an interesting thing. But I think the law of the law of obsolete technologies is so fascinating, and it was very much like a necessity of its time. But this is where perhaps teletext doesn't quite fit, because now that it's teletext has been democratized for people who choose to use it, because there's online editors and things like that. It is now becoming the sort of like the synchronous communication device, and it will it will evolve laws of itself. I mean, it could be very careless to make we all joke about, CFAX holidays and all that, but it could be very careless to actually put, I don't know, some sort of page that was meant to be passed off as a real page, and then that go into the internet search engines. And with things like AI and all that now, they could bring that up and cite that as an original source. And that law would then become sort of like very much like the hoaxes that were put around on fax law.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I was going to mention that's vaguely related to that is teletext is still going. And what if one of these hoax pages was broadcast on one of those pages and believed to be real? But it's not entirely beyond the realms of possibility, because CFAX Holidays has fooled many a person. It's even made it onto the BBC itself. So I think that's the ultimate cyclical life of the CFAX Holidays page. It will come full circle when it actually gets shown and presented as a real thing. It sort of happened when it was on the One Show. There was a screenshot of the CFAX Holidays mock-up, and there was a guy, a Vox Pop guy, that said, "Oh yeah, I remember CFAX Holidays. Yeah, my sister used to go on it." Yeah, so we've sort of reached that now, but it makes you feel sort of guilty if you started those sorts of hoaxes, doesn't it? Because that wasn't the original intention. The intention was to have a bit of a laugh.
But a touchstone was hit, wasn't it? That was the thing. The touchstone was that people remembered it for holidays. People remembered the name CFAX, so the rest sort of like it lends itself to things quite nicely. And when you look at the content that people are now providing on CFAX, proper parodies. Was it CFO? Would put they put up spoof TV and spoof movie references and all that, and they are very funny, and they're funny because they're delivered in a CFAX style. If they were written out as a tweet, it would just look like a dad joke, but when they're done on CFAX, there's a certain gravitas, there's a certain believability to what they're putting down.
And it sort of plays around with the folklore a bit, let's say. And that's how teletext lives on, I think, in these sort of half-truths and remembered things that get reapplied now. Like that, the mistaken belief that teletext was slow. But by the 90s, it was really quite quick, because you had modern televisions that cached the pages and all those other things, those myths that we've probably busted on the Mythbusters show that we did of teletext are. Now, I suppose all of those count as folklore as well. The real turn of the worm being sick, stuff like that. Did you ever go around to somebody else's house, have a beer, and watch a football match on teletext?
Well, we used to have, like, when you couldn't get the TV, when you couldn't get the game live, you would have that on, and it basically, in the end, you'd just be watching InVision and completely ignoring the what was going on, especially with the World Cup or something like that. You'd have one game on, and then you'd have the results from the other. But one thing that we used to do in the late 90s, maybe just when teletext took over, Stan James used to have Stan James is a bookmaker in the UK. Stan James used to buy some space, and I found some pages, and I think they were available to end users, but weren't. And it was a black box that came up in the top right hand corner. This is how early it was, because normally your scores go there now. But it would give you the live odds on corners. It would say how many corners there were, throw-ins there were, and it would offer you the spread betting odds up in the corner. and that was a service, obviously, for some like real sort of messed up gamblers who could gamble on absolutely anything. And that used to be on UEFA Champions League when ITV used to carry it. So that sort of dates when that was. So although it sort of sparked this memory off that, that's what you used to watch. I mean, it never used to bet or anything like that, but this fascination that like you and I have got with something going on in the background, it was always nice to see. But that would update, and that would update quicker than the bloody news. It was like, because that's where the money was. But there used to be sort of like live in vision betting towards the end, so it got very innovative. So you could sit down and have a beer to that.
I do remember that. I definitely remember the in-vision betting. Obviously, we would never put a bet on any of that, but it was just fun to see it. See, oh really? Chelsea 30-1 to score next. Wow, really? That much? So So what you mentioned about going round to a mate's house introduces kind of social hierarchies. Going back to what we said about Jim in the playground is the posh kid who has access to the reveal functions. He might be the one whose house that you all go to and crowd round his TV, have a Budweiser or whatever, and watch the in-vision betting.
Yeah, and it often a Trinitron as well. If it was Jim with the reveal button, he'd have a flat square tube Trinitron screen with fast text.
Yeah, fast text, of course. Yeah, because that's another thing that sorted the rich from the poor, isn't it? Fast text. We paid an extra £100 for fast text televisions.
Yeah, you're either renting one or you were loaded and you had one. It's sort of. And actually, that was the thing. My set didn't have fast text on. My mates did, and it was like, wow, this is incredible. It's sort of like you understood how it works and all that. It weren't anything like that. And then when the new tellies come out and it knew what channel it was going to, because there was some extra teletext packages it could read to tell you whether you're on BBC, ITV, or Channel 4. So there's all sorts of things like that. But the law would go that I thought I had that in my set, and I'd be searching every single page to try and enable it. Also, knowing what I know now, not knowing what I knew then, the level 2.5, 2.5 test screen, in the engineering pages, I used to stare at that and going, well, I don't really know what contiguous graphics are anyway. I just didn't really know. But when you see what that page was meant to look like when it is going through a proper chip, you go, wow, this is like, this is 21st century stuff.
Yeah, and you might see that and say, wow, is this going to come in the future? So some guy would have you on and say, oh, I've got level 2.5 teletext round at my house, look how good I am. Just boasting, making stuff up. Like saying, I've got Sonic 4, me. Look at that, Sonic 4 on the Mega Drive. Just making stuff up. So that was the sort of rumor that you would get, I think.
What I like about the whole thing about, these laws is that, tech law as such, it's because thousands of people use it, and you look at now, like it's gone in now to memes and copy and paste things, and it's now sort of like it lives on. It lives on, in sort of like TikTok videos and things, where people try and do outtakes on TikTok videos and things like that, and that's how the law is now going to carry on going. It will never finish. It will never finish. You will always find something else to assimilate on.
No, because we have cultural artifacts. So in folklore, these might be physical artifacts, like this pen. Like this very pen here has been passed down through the generations. But with teletext law, I think it will be more intangible. They're more data, memory type things. So teletext artifacts would be artworks like the weather map, the infamous running clock that would tell you when to put the clocks forward and back, Bamboozler, and of course palm trees. So I don't know if you can think of any other things along those lines, the teletext cultural artifacts.
Well, the travel pages would have like the queue, the traffic queue that they did on the picture. That was always a good one. And most teletext menus, excluding the John Burt era BBC one, which I've got a personal hatred for, where it was just like very boring. But yeah, there's all sorts of things like that. And I remember the Buzz logo as well. And the brick wall that they had, I think, on Oracle Kids, and yeah, there were some really good, iconic pieces of work there, and obviously, a lot of the work that Ian Irving did as well, So with 4T,
yeah,
so yeah, that was
Bossy
very
the
good
dog.
as well. Yeah,
So
that's it.
incidentally, guys, just a quick promotion piece. There is an interview, a written interview right now up on teletextart.co.uk with Ian Irving. And in that, he says that the show was never called 4T the Dog. Now, everybody remembers it as 4T the Dog. But of course, 4T the Dog was the character, and the show name, or the cartoon strip name, was The Fantastic Adventures of 4T. So that's another sort of CFAX holidays type thing that's become more
Sort of
well
a law
known,
or an idiom that's come up as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
people called it something else, and the adopted name becomes what it is.
that's it. Yeah, well, what's it called that when? I'm sure there is an actual term for that when it's a sort of euphemism or I don't know, a neologism. I can't remember, but there's a word for it, isn't there? When that it's not supposed to be called this, but people call it that. So that would, I suppose, sum up CFAX holidays as well. ZX Guesser says, my uncle works for CFAX and he brought a level 4 set home, but you can't come round and see it because we've all got smallpox and he has to take it back next week. Sorry.
Can you play Steve Davis snooker on it, mate? I need to know that as well.
That would be good.
That would be good, wouldn't it? That's it. Yeah. My uncle's brought home a level 4 set. Yeah, brilliant.
Although you'd get mixed. Oh no, yeah. Well, on level 1 teletext, you'd get mixed up between the brown and the reds, wouldn't you? Because there's no brown color.
And they're all square. All the balls are square.
Yeah.
The Bernie Saunders thing that came up, where he came up as a meme, looking really bored. I think it's either Obama's or Trump's inauguration, and he just sat there cross-legged with a blanket over his leg, looking particularly grumpy. And then that went across the demo scene, Commodore 64, with that as well, and it basically a picture of him appeared everywhere, and like in the Wild West, and he'd be there like photoshopped and all that, and then that became a sort of a law. And then of course I then saw that, and then saw a Commodore version, thought that would work really well in teletext, so I put him in front of a CFAX page. I mean, that was a good few years ago, and it's a real short-lived meme, because if you put it up now, people would really sort of struggle to know the the significance of it. But again, that was another perfect law example where it transcended every technology, and anybody who had the power to adapt it in any way just went out and mobilized and done it. You got the max headroom intrusion as well, which is another great piece of law. It's a piece of law that never stops giving. And then that works quite well across with teletext as well. It's sort of like intrusions. So if you see some hidden code, is that someone trying to hack into teletext?
Yes.
Are there hidden messages coming across? Is this your 4-minute warning? And they would tell you, but the snooker was on. So is this the only way you're going to find out? And it goes back to like clock trackers and regional opt-outs, secret codes. Is there one particular thing going on a misspelt word that's instructing somebody somewhere to go off and do something or not do something? My mind's racing away, but that's exactly what laws can do. It's sort of like perhaps a harmless way of not being too conspiratorial about things, maybe, but you can certainly let your imagination run wild with them.
Yeah, absolutely, because you would often have poor reception as well, which would garble your the words on the screen.
Yes.
So that could often change the meaning of what you are seeing. So it would remove words, perhaps, or change letters, so that you can't properly see what's going on, and that can be quite ominous in a way, because
if you're a follower of patterns and things like that, when you see something like that, and there is a term, isn't there, where you hide the messages in like in an encryption sort of way,
cryptography.
Cryptography or something like that. We use frequency analysis, and if you're getting J's and G's coming up where you should have E's and I's, it can probably blow someone's mind.
Yeah, that's with the recoveries though, isn't it? When you recover and recover teletext from a videotape, and it sometimes comes out that the software can't tell the difference between E's and J's. That's a very common thing. So teletext recovery. Oh my God, teletext recovery. All the E's are J's. So that's quite humorous though, isn't it? That's a very specific teletext geek piece of lore, isn't it?
Keep it teletext, keep it blocky. Thanks for that auto signature.
David, ZX Guesser says steganography, perhaps.
That's the one. Thank you, Guesser. Steganography.
That's hiding the data in something else, he says.
Yes. Which I think, you could do a lot of steganography with teletext art. You just convert it back to, you could just type in loads of rude words and then just change them into graphics mode. You could have the most graphically beautiful words. So if you type it in and then just change it into graphics, and it will make a picture.
Yeah, that happened, didn't it, with the teletext page broadcast on Doctor Who? It was supposedly a hidden signal from an alien planet. But when you actually put it into teletext and change those garbled graphics into text mode, it says stuff like bum fluff, arse flap, and stuff like that.
Oh, I did not know that.
Things.
I did not know. So that's another bit of lore then.
Yeah.
Hidden messages on that.
And
who
if you
picked that up? Was that Pete Fagan that picked that up? I can't remember. That was. Yeah. Because he loves his Doctor Who, and he's a Doctor Who buff.
Oh yeah, ZX Guesser mentions the Doctor Who thing. But if you remember our show with Pixel Blip, the Masters of Teletext, Pixel Blip it's called, he talks about the hidden messages that he includes in lots of his work. And if you go back through his discography, if you will, you can find them if you're looking for certain things. So that's a fun thing you can all go into.
Oh, very good. Things to do. Bit of homework for everyone.
Yes, homework. The Teletext Sofa Club homework, yes.
That's it.
So in regards to teletext lore, David says premium rate reveals. So that would be a good hoax, wouldn't it?
Yes, so.
Well, I think it's more the fact that you had to pay a premium rate to actually have a reveal button on your remote.
I see, yeah.
I think that's what it refers to.
Yeah.
ZX Guesser actually has the message that was broadcast on Doctor Who. And it says, Mon, nom, bog off you twit, ass face, bum, Doctor Who rules okay, so does Dave's program.
So how did this come? How was that discovered then? That was like a graphics mode, and it could be. Did someone actually just copy that out and just put that back in and just change it in an editor?
I think at some point somebody must have caught on to the fact that this is probably a hidden message, so let's try it.
Oh my God, that's very impressive. Very impressive.
Either that or Dave, who presumably programmed that, told everybody about it. Oh, there's a hidden message that I put in Doctor Who.
So that's an Easter egg there. So
yes.
Another bit of lore.
Well, David says also credit card reader on the remote. So see, that's brilliant, because that's the sort of thing that you would believe 100%. Because it's just the right size, isn't it? The TV remote is just the right size to put your. Let's pretend that is your credit card, and it just slips in like that, like a card reader.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
Page 1000. That'd be one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, page 999.
Yeah,
in people's homages to teletext, including the Spaceman video for Eurovision last year,
yes,
Sam Ryder, includes pages 999 and all these numbers that you can't actually have.
Teletext is just wrong. Yes, you just switch. But I like the way that it was, that teletext was used as a, as a visual medium for the video. And, I started watching it because it was teletext, but towards the end I thought, this has got a good chance of winning the song contest, and it's sort of like, it's almost as good as the Lancashire Hot Pots.
Well, thank you for that, Carl. So ZX Guesser has posted the meme of Alan Partridge saying, "Stop getting teletext wrong." On Discord. Yeah. Would you like to wrap up on teletext law?
I think it's been a really good subject. Really, it's been so interesting. Really good, well spotted. And I suppose you better tell everyone about the podcast where you got the inspiration from, because I'd never. Was it techlore? Did you say it was?
Well, I didn't know about it until it got recommended to me, but I think the name of the podcast is Netlore, and it talks about all kinds of different lore on the internet. So it sort of goes deep into these subjects that people find intriguing. And I think they said that one of the inspirations behind the name Netlore was fax law. So they decided to do a whole episode about fax law. And they wanted people to actually, because they were not ardent faxers back in the day, they're younger. They're younger netlorers. They actually were interested to find out more information from people who used faxes, and if they ever came across any of their own fax law. So I found that a very interesting subject, and a cool podcast, I would say. So the Netlore podcast, if you want to look that up.
If you fancy popping in on the Teletext Discord, drop me a PM and I'll send you the Discord link for that. Also, there is my Discord for the Byte High No Limit podcast, where I love to get feedback. In Ko-fi news, I'd like to thank my very first donor via Ko-fi, Meat Lotion. Thank you very much for your kind donation, which you can do on kofi.com/bytehigh. It will go towards the costs of hosting this podcast and keeping it up on Podbean, and also I'm using some of the funds for promotional materials as well. As I've always said before, this is a hobby for me, but any extra contributions will go towards offsetting any hosting costs that I have, so I really do appreciate it. You'll get yourself a mention on every podcast if you want to tick the publicity box, that is. So thanks again to you, Meat Lotion. You really are a star. Liking and reviewing the podcast also helps with the metrics of getting this podcast out there as well. So if you do have a bit of time and you fancy doing that, that would be most welcome. Byte High No Limit is a Byte High No Limit production, and it was presented by me, Carl Attrell, and Dan Farrimond. Until next time, keep it blocky.